Hi, everyone. Vasu Vaddiparty here with the VPartySports Podcast. Welcome in on a Monday afternoon, 3 o'clock on the East Coast, 12 o'clock on the West Coast. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific, we'll have Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo Podcast and the Shutdown inning. Hot stove baseball, free agency, Major League Baseball during the winter. There's no better time to talk about it, especially after the winter meetings just ended last week for Major League Baseball. We'll talk about all things Giants and all things Major League Baseball with Steven Rissotto at the bottom of the hour. Thanks to everybody on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for joining us. Don't forget, we'll be back on Thursday at 3 Eastern with a full NFL, NCAA, NBA hoops previews, as well as the weekly wrap-up. Daily posts on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at 6 o'clock Eastern weekdays. On the weekends, we go early. Stay tuned for that. If you're interested in sponsorships, please inquire me directly through Twitter, Facebook, direct message me on Facebook Messenger, and let me know how we can help you or your restaurant promote yourselves as well as promote the VParty Sports Podcast. All right, I am Vasu Vaddiparty, as I said. We're here with you on Monday afternoon after a big day of NFL football. Week 14 continued yesterday. Of course, we remember Thursday night, the Rams came back and beat the Raiders as a 6.5-point underdog, 42.5 the total. Raiders playoff spots pretty much out. But yesterday, the big day as we continue with Week 14. Buffalo and Kansas City both tied at 10-3 now after both wins. Both win yesterday. Buffalo now 10-3, lead the East. They have the number one seed over Kansas City because they beat Kansas City early in the year. But how about this? Neither one of them covered the points. Very interesting situation for the Bills. They were up 20-9. They couldn't turn field goals into touchdowns. Those of you that had the Bills laying 10. The only way that the Jets were going to come back was to kick a field goal to make it 8 and then have a chance at an onside kick. You knew it was going to happen. People that were watching at sports books and restaurants knew it was going to happen because that's the only chance that the Jets had was to kick a field goal, try and get the onside kick, and go down and score, and then get a two-point conversion. Now, Mike White is a beast. He got hurt during the game. They had to go to Joe Flacco. First play that Flacco played, he fumbled. The Bills got the ball. They went down, scored a touchdown, kind of opened up the spread a little bit. Jets couldn't hold him in the second half, only got field goals, as we said. Josh Allen, one rushing touchdown, one passing touchdown. As the Bills have the one seed, they're 10-3 now. In the AFC East, they have a two-game lead over Miami. We'll get to that in a second. The Jets lose also, as we said, to Buffalo. And then New England plays tonight. We'll have a full preview of Monday Night Football. The Kansas City Chiefs had a 27-0 lead. They were a 9-point favorite at Denver yesterday, and they were beating up Russell Wilson early in the game. Denver was able to put some pass rush, get some interceptions, as Mahomes threw three, very un-Patrick Mahomes-like, to throw three interceptions. But he did throw three touchdowns, including a touchdown of only Patrick Mahomes can do with an underhand Dan Quisenberry, for those who are old enough, sidewinding type of throw to Jerick McKinnon down the sideline for a touchdown. So Patrick Mahomes, three touchdowns, three touchdowns, three interceptions. And Russell Wilson had three touchdowns as well before they had to go to Brett Rippon after a Russell Wilson injury. So the Broncos long out of it. They've lost 6 in a row. They are going to, I think they've lost 5 in a row. Let me make sure I got that right here. Standings was, I know it was a lot in a row, so I want to say it was 5 in a row. They have lost 5 in a row. They are officially eliminated. Now Houston, the Bears are the only 4 teams of the 32 that are eliminated. So technically, there's still some wild card possibilities out there, and we'll get to all the ramifications in a second. But Russell Wilson injured, did throw for 3 touchdowns, 27-0 lead down. People that laid the 9 points on the Chiefs probably were figuring that was going to not come back and bite them the way Denver's offense has gone this year, coming into the game only averaging 16 points per game and giving up 20. But here they were in the position, 34-28. Kansas City with the win. They have not covered all but one game in the last 7, I believe. And Denver covered last week against Baltimore, and now they did against the Chiefs at home. Kansas City, 10-3, 5-2 on the road, 4-0 in the division. They're 3 games up on the Chargers and 5 up on the Raiders. All right, now we go to the NFC. The number 1 seed Philadelphia Eagles roll over the Giants, 48-22. Clinched a playoff spot. Not that's a duh moment because the Philadelphia Eagles were already 11-1. Now, whether they can hold on to the number 1 seed is going to be the big question. Minnesota lost to Detroit, so they're 2 games back of Philadelphia for the overall best record. But Philadelphia beat them in week 2 on Monday night, so they have the tiebreaker. So make it 3 games now. looks to be a clinch of a number one seed for Philadelphia. Not impressed with Minnesota the way they played. Play a lot of close games. They've had some big wins. Obviously, with a 10-3 record for Minnesota, they've had big wins, but they lost to Detroit 34-23. Jalen Hurts had 2 touchdown passes. He also ran for one. Pretty much the rinse and repeat formula for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts running and throwing for touchdowns. The Giants, after their tie last week with Washington, they fall all the way down to 7th in the wild card standings. They are behind the Washington Commanders. The Commanders have the better division record. They played to a tie last week against each other. They're going to have another game against each other to figure out what goes on. Jared Goff, meanwhile, for Detroit in their win over Minnesota, 330 yards passing, 3 touchdowns in that 34-23 win over Minnesota. The Lions are red hot. They've got a chance at the wild card spot too. As I look at it, the Detroit Lions are 6-7. They're only a game back of Seattle for the 8th spot. They're 2 games back in the loss column of the Giants. They beat the Giants this year early in New York about 3 weeks ago. They really roughed up the New York Giants in the Meadowlands, so they've got a shot to catch them. I don't think they played Washington this year. Let me check and see the schedule here. They did. They beat the Commanders as well, too, at home. So they've got a chance here to catch both New York and Washington. It's going to be tough to catch both, but they might be able to catch one right now. But they have both head-to-head wins, and if they're all tied, it goes to a round-robin tiebreaker, and the Giants and the Detroit Lions have the advantage over both of them as well. So the Detroit Lions making a push here, maybe for a playoff spot. Seattle is in 7th. They're in 8th above Detroit right now, and they lost to Seattle. So that may be where the armor gets cracked a little bit. The Seahawks beat Detroit 48-45 back on October 2nd. So that will be a tough one for Detroit to overcome. But the way Seattle's leaking oil right now, it wouldn't surprise me if they lost 2 or 3 more. Seattle with a tough game against San Francisco Thursday night. We'll get to them in a second. But meanwhile, as we said, 2 hot teams. Speaking of Seattle, they're going to host San Francisco on Thursday night. The 2 hottest teams in football right now, the Cincinnati Bengals, a 5-game winning streak, and a 6-game winning streak for the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. Remember him? Pick number 254 in the draft. Mr. Irrelevant in those days, and somebody that's old enough can remember some of the football players from the drafts of the past can tell me. I don't know how many years it was. Maybe an NFL alumni can get to me here on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. But now Mr. Irrelevant gets cash, gets a car, gets a trophy that says the last player picked in the draft, gets some recognition. And so Brock Purdy is that. I have said, those who follow me on Facebook and Twitter, said Brock Purdy is a steal for the 49ers as the last pick of the draft. He played 4 years at Iowa State, a 4-year starter. I thought he was going to have himself a pretty decent career. He's off to a good start right now, and I'm not putting him in Canton yet. Jimmy Garoppolo, when he came to the 49ers back in 2017 or 2018, got off to a 5-0 start as well, too, and things were looking up for the 49ers at that point. But now they've got Brock Purdy, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, a 35-7 win over Tampa Bay. Tom Brady was intercepted twice. Unbelievable defense. Pressure all over Brady. They never got to him for an official sack, but he was hit, and he was hit hard, and he was missing receivers left and right. Very un-Brady-like performance for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they fall to 6-7. Really kind of a cool moment. I'm not a parent, so I don't know, but they kept going up to the stands to show Brock Purdy's parents. The last pick of the draft coming in off an injury 2 weeks ago to Garoppolo, leading them to the win, leading them to kind of like very Dennis Eckersley-like or Mariano Rivera-like to close out that win, and then come in as a starter this week over Tampa Bay and a Hall of Famer, Tom Brady. Purdy said when asked during the week about playing against Tom Brady, he's been playing football longer than I've been alive, and that's partially true. Brock Purdy's only 23 years old. Tom Brady's been in the league for 25 years, so clearly Brock Purdy has it all together from that standpoint. And he played 4 years in college, so he's got that maturity about him. He knows what to do. Kyle Shanahan trusts him in that offense. It's going to be tough for the 49ers to lose with that defense. So Purdy can do the things that he's doing this last week and a half. It's going to be a pretty good race. They're a game away Thursday night from playing Seattle, a team that they can beat. They already dominated them at home in week 2. They're going to play Thursday night. It's a short week. Seattle came off a loss to Carolina, and we'll get to that in a second. But the 49ers with a win, they'll clinch the division. They'll have a big lead on Seattle. They'll have the tiebreaker over the Seahawks. They'll win the division and kind of go into the last 4 weeks, and they have a chance to catch the number 2 Minnesota Vikings as well too, because San Francisco 9-4, they've got a better conference record than Minnesota. They're 7-2 in the. Let's get this back here. There we are. So they've got the Minnesota Vikings at 10-2. The little glitch there. They've got a chance to overtake the number 2 spot and get to a better seeding for the playoff spot. So the 49ers and their team at 9-4 now, 2 games back of Minnesota. They've got a better division record, better conference record. So let's see how that goes. All right, the other hot team, 5-game winning streak for the Cincinnati Bengals. They are now at 9-4. They're still behind the Ravens in terms of division, but they are 9-4. The Ravens won yesterday. They lost head-to-head to Baltimore early in the year, so that's the only thing that's keeping them from a division. But they are one of the hottest teams right now. They're probably the hottest team in the AFC. They have a win over Kansas City, and they've won 5 in a row. They're gonna be playing next week. I forget who they're playing. They beat the Browns up 23-10. They were all over Deshaun Watson. Joe Burrow had 2 touchdowns, and they got 2 fourth-down stops late in the game. I know people were worried about that -5.5 for Cincinnati, but they got 2 fourth-down stops to beat up the Browns 23-10. Joe Burrow, 2 touchdowns, able to lead them to a victory. It was tight, nip and tuck in the third quarter, nip and tuck in the fourth quarter, but the Bengals were able to get through it. All right, moving on. Let's look at the Jaguars and the Panthers. Both teams in the South. You thought the South was over in the NFC for Tampa Bay after their comeback win last Monday night. They get throttled by San Francisco yesterday, as we said. The Carolina Panthers, they were trading everybody. They released Baker Mayfield. They traded Christian McCaffrey to San Francisco. They traded Robbie Anderson, their wide receiver, to the Arizona Cardinals, and they fired their coach Matt Rule. Right now, Steve Wilkes has them going. But how about this? The Carolina Panthers, with their victory over Seattle, by the way, former New York Jets quarterback bowl there with Sam Darnold and Geno Smith, both at quarterback. You look at Carolina, they're 5-8. They're a game back of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a win in their pocket against Tampa Bay. How about this? If they run the table, including a win against Tampa Bay, they're going to end up winning that division. They're going to end up winning that division with guys that they didn't even have on the roster to start. They got a win yesterday, 30-24 over Seattle. Chuba Hubbard, the touchdown run, he's their featured back now with McCaffrey gone. The defense was great. They intercepted Geno Smith twice. Seattle now with this loss, I believe Seattle has lost. Actually, they've lost 1 in a row, but they've been struggling the last few weeks, definitely leaking oil. They got that come from behind win against the Rams 2 Sundays ago, but they got beat up. Geno Smith's first pass of the game was an interception that led to a touchdown after Carolina got a 3-0 lead. So 10-0, 17-0 after that. And then Seattle tried to make a comeback, 30-24. They lose out. They're 2 back of the 49ers, who said. They lose the tiebreaker to San Francisco, and now they're in the wild card hunt. They're out of the playoffs. If the playoffs started today, they would be in the 8th spot. They would be behind the Giants at 7-5-1 and Washington at 7-5-1. Washington has a tiebreaker over the Giants by virtue of division record, but Seattle's in the 8th spot at 7-6. And don't forget about those Detroit Lions that are 6-7. It's very interesting to see how this goes. All right, so Carolina can win the division if it wins out. They've got games against the Falcons. They've got games against the Buccaneers. They split against the Falcons. They've got a game against the Buccaneers, and they've got another game. Let me see here. Let's get the schedule. Let's be accurate about this. They've got the Steelers. They've got the Lions. That's a big game. If they can't win the division, that's a big game for them because the Lions are in the playoff hunt again. Then Tampa Bay, then New Orleans to close the season out. Remember, there are no more buys. So everybody after tonight will be at 13 games. All right, let's look at the AFC South now. Jacksonville beats up on Tennessee. Tennessee is leaking oil. I said Seattle was leaking oil, but the Tennessee Titans are leaking oil and leaking oil badly. They have Derrick Henry, best running back in the game. Ryan Tannehill has not looked good. Their receivers, they traded A.J. Brown in the middle of the summer. So they've been trying to work their offense back. They got off to a great start, 7-2 to start. They were recovering every week as well too, but they get beat by Jacksonville 36-22. Jaguars are now 5-8. They're 2 back of Tennessee, who've lost 3 straight. They play Tennessee on the final weekend of the season. If they can run out the table and have the tiebreaker edge against Tennessee, they can win the division. And both the AFC South and NFC South are going to only have one team represented in the playoffs, and it's going to be the division winner. Week 18 matchup could be for the playoff spot or the division. 3 touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence and 368 yards. And that Week 18 matchup looks to be big if both teams can hold out and get to that point. All right. Ravens beat Pittsburgh 16-14. They have the division lead over the Bengals. Tyler Huntley played for Lamar Jackson. He got hurt, only had 88 yards passing. They had to go to backup. Adrian Brown after the injury. Mitch Trubisky replaced Kenny Pickett, who was injured after one pass. He threw 3 interceptions. The Steelers still had a chance to win that game, but Baltimore holds on. They maintain that first place lead over Cincinnati by virtue of the head-to-head matchup. 9-4 their record as they lead the AFC North. They've got a game with Cincinnati. I don't know when that game is. Let's see when that game is. Cincinnati and Baltimore will be playing. Cincinnati has Tampa Bay next week. They've got the Ravens in Week 18. Baltimore next week with no byes. They will have Cleveland, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, and then that Week 18 matchup for the division with the Cincinnati Bengals. All right. Now, I told you this on Friday. It is very tough to lay 17 points or more, a touchdown or more in the NFL to begin with. Here comes the lowly Texans, the lowly Houston Texans. They did lose, but they did cover. 17.5 points, a lot of points. Cowboys offense has been struggling a little bit the last few weeks. Defense has been great. I know they put 33 up in the fourth quarter on the Colts last week, but a 17.5 point favorite is a lot of points in the NFL. The NFL, every team has good players. A 27-23 comeback final for the Cowboys. They score in the last 3 minutes of the game. They hold on 4th down. They hold the 5th spot. They're 2 back of Philadelphia. They play Christmas Eve after they visit Jacksonville next week. Dak threw 2 more interceptions, 1 more in the red zone. They do have a 10-3 record, but this is going to be tough for them to keep going if their offense struggles like this against teams like the Texans. Texans have a pretty good defense, but they're not the class of the Philadelphia Eagles or the Minnesota Vikings or any of the teams that Dallas will have to get through in the playoffs. So that's where the Cowboys are at. Don't take teams over 7 points, 7.5 points in the NFL if you think it's going to be closer than that. There was no way I was going to take Houston, bet 17.5, but there's no way, even less of a chance to take Dallas laying 17.5. The game did go over, surprisingly, as Houston did score points. Davis Mills turned out to be a pretty good quarterback for the Houston Texans. Damian Pierce, a good running back for them. And they're 1-11, I believe is what they're. Yeah, 1-11-1. And they just had an awful year to begin with. But it's going to be interesting to see how they turn it around. They and the Bears are playing out for the number 1 draft pick again. The Bears 3-10 have their bye this week. All right. Sunday Night Football last night saw the Chargers rise up to play the most complete game of the year. They had the most complete game against Miami, 23-17. I think every pundit out there, I think myself included, took Miami -3 on the road. Road teams are hard to wager on. Road favorites are hard to wager on. Always look at home dogs. I saw the Los Angeles Chargers with their offensive line problems, with their receivers. Now the receivers were back. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are back. Defensively, they had a ton of injuries on defense. And after last week in San Francisco, Miami Dolphins looked horrendous on offense. They looked even worse last night in Los Angeles. 7th now is the Chargers as they overtake the Jets. They have the tiebreaker advantage on the Jets based on best winning percentage in conference games. The Jets lost to Buffalo. Mike Williams is back, 116 yards. Keenan Allen with 12 catches. They're 7th. Miami is 6th now in the wild card race. Not to mention the Miami Dolphins are also 2 back in the division race. They do have a win over Buffalo, so there's still an outside chance that you catch them for the division. But that's a long way to go, and they've got a game against Buffalo next Saturday night. We start going to Saturday football, and we'll preview all of that on Thursday. All right, finally, the Monday Night Football preview. We've got the New England Patriots at the Arizona Cardinals. New England a 2.5 point favorite, 43.5 the total. The Patriots have struggled. They're 6-6. They're last in their division. 3 games back of Buffalo. They have had a rough go of it lately. They are on a, let's see if I got this right here. I thought they were on they are on a 2-game losing streak after giving up points on Thanksgiving in Minnesota. And then last week, they gave up a lot of points to where were they playing at? They gave up points to Minnesota. They were on a bye the week before. And then before Thanksgiving, they gave up, they beat the Jets, and then they gave up a ton of points to Buffalo. I want to say it was week 10 that they gave up a lot of points to Buffalo. Where are they? Nonetheless, week 12, week 13. They lost to Buffalo on Thursday night. That's right. They had 2 Thursday night games in a row, Thanksgiving, and then they lost to Buffalo. They got manhandled by Buffalo 24-10. So they go in tonight. Probably no Damian Harris. They're going to be without Jacoby Myers, their wide receiver. Arizona's just had an awful year. Everybody thought they were going to be up there with the division, 4-8, playing out the string. They're 3 games back of 7th place. They're not going to get there. Kyler Murray off and on all year, 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 1-6 straight up at home, 3-4 against the spread. Patriots are 3-3 on the road straight up and 3-2-1 against the spread. That one, I believe, was the Pittsburgh game. The over at home for Arizona, 5-2. And what's the 43.5 might get there. Arizona's defense hasn't been great. New England 3-3 as we get to Monday Night Football. We'll have the best bet segment in a second. But when we come back, Vasu Vaddiparty here on the VParty Sports Podcast for this Monday NFL recap, Monday Night Football preview, Arizona hosting New England tonight. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we'll have Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo podcast and Shutdown inning. We'll talk hot stove baseball. When we come back in 30 seconds, we'll run through the NBA. We'll run through the NCAA real quick for the weekend. I'll give you the best bet segment before we get to Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo cast. Vasu Vaddiparty and Shutdown inning too. Vasu Vaddiparty here on the VParty Sports Podcast. Don't forget, we'll be back Thursday, 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific, with a full NFL preview for Thursday Night Football, 49ers and Seahawks, NCAA, NBA hoops, and daily posts, of course, 6 o'clock Eastern every day during the weekday. Check us out if you're interested in sponsorship inquiries. Please contact me directly through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Thanks, everybody, to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. When we come back, we'll get to the NBA and college football before we get to Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo podcast and Shutdown inning to talk hot stove baseball. Back in 30 seconds. Welcome back to the VParty Sports Podcast. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. You can reach me on Twitter and Instagram at VPartySports. We're here 3 times a week. Our next show will be Thursday, 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific. Full NFL, NCAA, NBA previews that day, a recap of the week, daily posts on social media at 6 o'clock Eastern. Don't forget, if you're interested in sponsorship inquiries, please contact me directly. All right, we just recap all of Week 14. We have a Monday Night Football game with the New England Patriots and the Arizona Cardinals tonight. Let's hit the NBA here before we get to Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo cast and Shutdown inning. You see the NBA lines going to the bottom of the screen. Let's run through the NBA a little bit here. The lines today: Miami at Indiana. Miami 3-point favorite, 228. Brooklyn at Washington. Brooklyn did not play with 8 guys. They still won at Indiana Saturday. Memphis 8 versus Atlanta. They usually play this game on Martin Luther King Day. It would have been great. TNT has a big day on Martin Luther King Day, but Memphis hosting Atlanta. No DeJounte Murray still. He'll be out for another week and a half. Dallas 8.5 versus Oklahoma City. Dallas 9th place. We get to the standings in a little bit. Cleveland on the road at San Antonio, 7.5-point favorite, 219. There, Portland, Minnesota. They just played the other night. They're playing again, -4 for Minnesota, 230. Pretty high total there. Boston, after losing to the Warriors on Saturday night, they're 3.5 at the Clippers. 224.5. All right, some NBA news to get to. Sunday night, 2 overtimes for Sunday. The Hawks beat the Bulls 123-122 in OT. New Orleans beat Phoenix 129-124. You're going to be surprised when we get to the standings to see where the New Orleans Pelicans are in the Western Conference. The Kings, they've been playing well, but they lost to New York in Madison Square Garden 112-99. How about the Milwaukee Bucks? They're injured. They're getting Middleton back. They're trying to figure out where they are. They're still one of the best teams in the East, but they get upset by Houston of all teams. They were on the road, 97-92 the final for the Houston Rockets. Lakers have been playing better. They got beat up by Philadelphia the other night. They got beat up by Cleveland last week, but they beat Detroit 124-117. And the Magic upset Toronto, and Philadelphia beat Charlotte 131-113. Saturday, the Spurs upset the Heat 115-111. The Nets, we told you about 8 guys missing, but they still ended up winning 136-133. And John Wall returning back to Washington, D.C. The Clippers win 114-107 over the Washington Wizards. Cavaliers beat Oklahoma City. The Bulls romp a Luka-less Mavs team. They get 144 points on Dallas one night after Dallas loses on a game-winning shot by Brook Lopez to the Milwaukee Bucks. Denver beat Utah 115-110, and Utah over Utah. Portland 124-118 over Minnesota. The big game of the night Saturday was the Warriors. They chew up Boston 123-107. Defense was back for one night. Boston only got 107 points. It's only the third time all year that they've scored 107 or less all season. They're 21-6. Warriors 14-13. Curry and Clay, the Splash Brothers, everybody knows who they are. 66 points combined. 34 for Klay Thompson. When he's hot, you know how hot he can get. 34 for Clay, 32 for Steph Curry to combine for that 66. Boston held to only 44% field goal shooting. 53-39. They were out-rebounded. Very un-Celtic-like game on Saturday night. They get the Clippers tonight. They're a 3.5-point favorite, as we said, in Los Angeles. They'll look to come back a little bit tonight. All right, the standings, the top 10 in the East. Boston at 21-6, as we said. 19-7 for Milwaukee. 17-10 for Cleveland. They played well this year. They've had some tough games. They've had some tough losses, but they lost to Sacramento on Friday night. They came back and won against Oklahoma City Saturday. Brooklyn 16-12 now. They've got a game tonight at Washington. The Philadelphia 76ers, I think they're getting their act together a little bit back, 14-12 and 14-13 for Atlanta. Indiana 14-13, New York 14-13, Toronto 13-14, Miami 12-15 to round out the top 10. In the West, the New Orleans Pelicans lead the Western Conference at 18-8. How about that? Zion Williamson averaging 25 a game, CJ McCollum 17 a game. They've been playing well. Brandon Ingram still not back yet for them, but they're playing well, and they're a good team, and they're leading the way in the West right now. Memphis 17-9 behind John Morant's 27 a game. Denver with the back-to-back MVP Jokic 16-10. Phoenix 16-11. Sacramento 14-11. Portland 14-12. The Clippers 15-13. The Warriors on trending upward after their win versus the Celtics 14-13. Utah 15-14, and then Dallas playing off and on 13-13 so far this year. All right, NCAA. We got a little NCAA to talk about. Some big games over the weekend. ASU is at Creighton in Las Vegas tonight. The Sun Devils off a big win over SMU, a 5-point favorite. Creighton, close win over BYU, but doesn't cover, -10. And undefeated New Mexico, the Lobos coming into in Vegas also. They're going to play the USF Dons, who are 8-2. Vegas 9-0. New Mexico 4-point favorite. Over the weekend, number 1 Houston loses to Alabama. Syracuse beats Georgetown. LSU over Wake Forest in an SEC-ACC game. St. Mary's, a very good team in the WCC. I don't know if they're going to contend with Gonzaga, but they beat San Diego State, and Xavier over Cincinnati. Glad to see those two teams playing back again, too. And Kansas City rolls over Missouri. UNLV is 10-0. They beat Washington State. Memphis over Auburn as well, too. So here we go. Sunday, Tennessee beat Maryland, number 7 over to 13. The Vols now 9-1. Maryland 8-2. Conference play all weekend. The Big Ten, ACC, Penn State upset Illinois. Purdue in overtime over the scrappy Nebraska. Wisconsin, a mild upset over Iowa in overtime. Miami over NC State, and UNC wallops Georgia Tech. All right, when we come back in 30 seconds, we will have Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo podcast and Shutdown inning. We'll talk hot stove baseball. We will talk winter meetings. We'll talk everything that we need to know about that. We will be right back in 30 seconds on the VPartySports Podcast, and we will have Steven Rissotto on. Back in 30 seconds. All right, welcome back. Vasu Vaddiparty here with the VParty Sports Podcast with you. We talked NFL. We recapped all Sunday. We'll get to the best bet segment in a second, but I want to first bring in Steven Rissotto to the broadcast. Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo cast and Shutdown inning. It's always a good time to talk baseball. Baseball is my number one. Obviously, if you've heard his podcast, it's a good listen. Is it Steve or Steven? I want to make sure I get this right. Whatever's comfortable for you.
You could go with Steven, you could go with Rizzo, you could go with Risotto. I've heard it all. So, but good to be with you, Vasu. And definitely, like you said, a great time to talk baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. This is the VParty Sports Podcast. Vasu Vaddiparty here. We'll get to the best bet segment in a little bit, but I want to get Steven Rissotto on, as we said, to talk a little hot stove baseball. We had the winter meetings last week. A lot of free agency going on in baseball. The Aaron Judge signing, obviously the big chip to fall. He re-signs with New York. Xander Bogaerts goes to San Diego. DeGrom, kind of a surprise, went to the Rangers, and Verlander leaves Houston to go to the Mets. Turner and Boston signs Kenley Jansen and Yoshida. Let's get to Aaron Judge here for a second. Now, I know you do a lot of San Francisco Giants stuff, but I kind of want to keep it general. Did you think that he was going to leave New York to begin with?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's the $1 million question, or I guess $360 million question. I kind of went through phases of
a lot
where
of questions.
I kind of went through phases, Vasu, where I thought that it would go either way. I think at the beginning of the offseason, I kind of thought, there's no way him leaving the New York Yankees. I can't see that as any type of possibility. And, then, stuff started coming out where he was upset at the Yankees. And we saw the Time Magazine article come out just the other day, the day that he signed, or the day before he signed. And then we saw the video of him at the hotel in San Francisco. And it kind of started to get a little bit more real of the possibility of the Giants signing him. Hometown kid, that was the theme that was played quite a bit. And it sounds like he just kind of used San Francisco as leverage to get back to New York. And he ended up, because New York obviously offered him that deal back in April, the $213 million deal. And Judge bet on himself, hit 62 homers, and now, played the Yankees, made the Yankees sweat a little bit so that they could offer him that $360 million. But for a second, I think a lot of people thought he would be going to San Francisco. Then maybe it was 50-50, but in the end, I think he obviously wanted to protect his legacy and head back to New York, where he could get a monument in Monument Park one day.
Our guest, Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo podcast and Shutdown inning. We'll get to him in a second as far as what to look for in his podcast. But let me give you my take on it, because I don't know, you read my stuff every once in a while, so maybe you saw what I said. I didn't think, and I had this conversation with Marty Lurie of the Giants broadcast, and I said, I don't think he would be very good to be in San Francisco. He can hit and he can adjust to any ballpark. But right center field and right field, where his strengths are really, really, really attractive at Yankee Stadium versus the big right center field in Oracle Park, and the right field wall being as high as it would. I think if he came to the Giants, he would not hit as many home runs. I think the average would be there and his eye was there and all that. But I just thought that many years for the Giants, unless you had other players coming in, and now they've signed other players, and we'll get to that in a second. But that's kind of my take on it in a nutshell. You kind of agree with me, or am I in the ballpark on that?
Yeah, I think you're definitely in the ballpark, and I think that's the issue the Giants have had in the past with getting free agent position players to sign with them. The ballpark has always kind of been an issue. They moved the fences in, and I guess you can make the argument now with a lot of the swing changes combined with maybe the baseball, and then combined with the weather, is that Oracle Park in reality is a little bit more neutral than it once was.
Right.
And I think, the rest of the National League West, you look around the places Aaron Judge would be playing. Dodger Stadium was for a long time known as a very either pitcher's park to neutral. Now it's probably neutral. Mm-hmm. San Diego was looked at a big, as a big spacious pitcher's park. Now they moved the fences and they've done some things to make that a little bit more hitter friendly. And Chase Field and Colorado, I mean, we know what they are, so they're hitter's paradise. So yeah, at the end of the day, no, I agree with you. I think Yankee Stadium is a great place to hit. Judge's power, as you mentioned, to right center, to right field, works pretty well there. So that might have played a factor in maybe keeping in wanting to keep his numbers consistent.
I'll say this about Aaron Judge, and I know, and I'm a little older than you, and I worked in Silicon Valley. I'll say it's no different than anybody else that's listening to this podcast. You go for the best offer, you go what you're looking for. He just did what every Silicon Valley executive did, and he leveraged other offers against what the Yankees did and took the offer. Also that, I mean, he's following Derek Jeter and Thurman Munson and other guys into the captaincy. They're going to put a C on his chest, and now you're talking about a legacy signing, Steven.
Yeah, well, you had the podcast, Take the Money and Run podcast. I remember it. So Aaron Judge, what did he do? He took a play from that playbook, and he took the money and ran. But
I think
maybe he didn't, because there are some other offers. The Giants,
Yeah.
I think the Yankees simply matched the Giants. San Diego, it was.
I think they offered more.
Yeah, they offered. Well, it was first reported that they offered more, but I think details are starting to leak that San Diego,
four big ones.
Yeah, San Diego had verbally. They didn't put an official offer out, but verbally $400 million in that ballpark. So, and if he didn't want to go play in San Diego, arguably one of the best American cities, then he was going to go back to New York.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be the case anyway, and he did, and make the money and run when we did sports wagering and all that. He bet on himself, and he won. There's no doubt. He rolled 7s and 11s at the crap table all year long with what he did, and it turned out to be an American League MVP year, AL record home run number that he reached at 62. And so why wouldn't you go back to New York? I mean, can you imagine? And by the way, wouldn't it have been funny if the Giants had signed him and they opened up in New York next year, which they do, to have him go back in game number 1 after the Yankees could not sign him? That'd have been funny. And I know the Dodgers were interested in him, and I'm a Dodgers guy a little bit growing up in Southern California, so it would have been nice to see him there. But I thought the best spot for him to go back to was New York anyway. All right, so the big chip has fallen. Let's hit some of the others in free agency, and we'll get to the Giants in a second because I know you primarily concentrate on them. Xander Bogaerts goes east to west, 11 years, $280 million. They didn't get Judge. They needed a shortstop. 2 years in a row, I've been saying Fernando Tatis. I couldn't really predict his injury status, but just playing baseball and watching baseball, and I know you played in college too, so we talk a lot of baseball, and we think we know baseball, but we'll take what we get for that. But 11 years, $280 million. Their defense, as soon as Bob Melvin came in, I knew their defense was going to be good last year, and it sure was. Kim at short. Now they're going to move Kim to second and Cronenworth to first. That's going to be a great right side. Machado is terrific. Now you got Bogaerts at short. They're going to put Tatis in the outfield, less of an injury risk. He's got stone hands, and I thought he was just not a good shortstop to begin with. And that showed 2 years ago when they collapsed in the NL West. They were riding high, and then they collapsed and didn't even make the playoffs in 2020. Talk about Bogaerts, and then Trey Turner, 11 years going back east to Philadelphia. I'm worried about what the Dodgers are going to do at shortstop now. I know Correa and Swanson are out there. I like Dansby Swanson and Carlos Correa. So let's take these 4 shortstops and talk about Bogaerts, Correa, and then we'll see what your speculation is on Swanson and Correa.
Yeah, well, we'll start with Bogaerts, and I mean, I thought all the deals were, up until that point, I thought they were all okay. That makes sense. Maybe a little bit of an overpaid there, a little bit of an overpay here, but the Bogaerts getting 11 years and close to $300 million, that one surprised me a little bit. And I think it shows a little bit of what they think about Tatis not being a shortstop, like you mentioned. He had a lot of throwing errors there a few years ago, and maybe he's just an outfielder. Maybe that's how they view him in the long term. And they have a really good infield now with Bogaerts over there on the left side with Machado. And then as for Turner, I mean, Turner is a guy who wanted to play on the East Coast. That was kind of his main preference. He wanted to train with a team that had spring training in Florida, and he's going to a Phillies team that has a lot of history in building their current squad right now in free agency. Zach Wheeler and Bryce Harper and Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber, and the list goes on. And Dave Dombrowski over there loves to spend money. He's spending it here on Trey Turner, and they're getting their guy for $300 million, $330 million. So that's kind of where the shortstop market has been. As for Correa, I heard he's got a lot of suitors. He's got a few that are notable. Obviously, the Giants, the Twins want to bring him back. The Cubs, who have not acted like a big market in the past, they have money. They don't like to spend money for whatever reason, but they have it. And Dansby Swanson, does he go back to Atlanta? Does he sign with the Cubs, the Dodgers? The Dodgers, Vasu, better than anybody.
I think they're very interested in him. I think they're very interested in Dansby Swanson.
Yeah, and they've been crickets up until this point, and a lot of people think it's because the luxury tax rules, have like kind of slowed them down a little bit this offseason. We'll kind of see. I can't rule them out. I think, definitely they've been brewing something up, and Swanson would be a great fit for them. But no, I mean, if you wanted to invest in something that would work, that would age well, the shortstop market is the place where these teams have to invest in. Kudos to the ones that have done it already.
What do you think about the Giants possibly going after Correa? I mean, obviously his name's out there, but what do you think the chances are that he comes to San Francisco?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question. I keep saying $1 million question, but it is
multi-million-dollar question.
Yeah, it's a matter of if he wants to sign there. That's the matter with every San Francisco Giant big name that they go after, right? It's a matter of if he wants to sign there, because they could outspend the Twins. They could bully my friend Ben Kaspick with the Locked On Giants podcast. He said this on his podcast. The Giants could bully the Twins financially. Sure. They could play hardball with the Cubs and probably outbid them. They have a lot of money to spend, but it's if Correa wants to go to the Giants. Does Carlos Correa look at the Giants right now and say, this roster, I like this roster. We have a path to win this year and next year and the year after? Or does he sit back and say, wow, this team, won 81 games coming off 107 wins. There's, the farm system took a big step back. Yeah. I don't want to sign here because I don't think I have a great chance to win. Let's go to the Yankees or let's go to the Twins, So it's a matter of if he wants to sign. I think the Giants, it's essential. There's no reason why they should not be among one of the highest bidders for Correa, but it's a matter of if he wants to come here.
Don't forget, Dombrowski also went after another Mets pitcher. He got Taekwon Walker back. Got Taekwon Walker from the Mets as well, too. So they're building up that rotation. Really surprised how they ended up National League Championship Series. I didn't see any bingo cards that had the Phillies in the NLCS last year. So good for them. And maybe they'll compete. The Mets are there. Let's go to the Mets a little bit. They got Quintana. They took Verlander from the Astros. They've got Scherzer there. Their roster's kind of set up. They signed, I forgot the Japanese guy's name, Sengai. They're looking at him in the rotation, and now you've got Carrasco, a fifth starter, really good. David Peterson is there as well, too. Mets, very disappointed they lost to the Padres in the early round last year, but, you've got to take on them as well, too, because they're competition for what the rest of the National League's going in.
Yeah, so there's, there obviously, that there's, a lot of billionaires that own these teams, and, Steve Cohen is one of them, and his net worth maybe is a little bit larger than some of the other owners, but he is doing this exactly the way it should be done, right? I mean, the Mets are spending a boatload of money this offseason. They don't even care about the luxury tax threshold. Right. That's like in the rearview mirror. They have sped past that. Their payroll is going to be north of like $420 million, I think I saw, with the penalties included.
Right.
I mean, this is how baseball, especially baseball without a
salary cap.
Yeah. Thank you. This is this is what you have to do. And the Mets, Steve Cohen, said, we're not gonna hold back. And, they completely revamped their rotation, despite Jacob deGrom going to Arlington. They bring back Nimmo. They bring in David Robertson in the bullpen. You mentioned some of the other rotation guys they brought in. And they still might not be done. So, this is how you do it. And this is a good example of the ownership being involved. Because at the end of the day, if you're the GM of the New York Mets, you have the best job in baseball because you could go after whoever you want and you have the resources to do it. So, no, it's definitely a huge offseason for the Mets, and the Braves. Do they have something to say about it? Maybe their corresponding move is to say, okay, now we kind of have to go get Dansby Swanson, So, it's interesting, but the Mets, I think they're having the best offseason by far because they're not worried about anything. And that's, I think, how it should be. Spend these owners money. Don't let them continue to stuff, money in their pockets.
Yeah. This is a VPartySports Podcast. Vasu Vaddiparty here with you. We talked NFL, we talked NBA, we talked NHL a little bit in the previous segment. I'll get to the best bet segment after our conversation here with Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo cast and Shutdown inning. You know what? I want to ask you about you here for a little bit before we come back to baseball here. So tell me how you're a young man, 24. You got this podcast. I saw where you're a pitcher at San Francisco State. You got the 2 podcasts. Now you're in the media side of it. I pitched a little bit. Mine was less of a career than yours at San Jose State, but that was like a while back ago. But baseball has always been number one for you. You're of the generation where baseball is third or fourth nowadays, but it seems like baseball is number one for you. So kind of give everybody an idea of who you are here and what your podcast is about.
Yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate you thinking I'm 24. I'm 20,
Oh,
so
okay.
a little younger.
You're very mature then.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry, class of 2024. That's what I read.
Yeah, class of 2024 at SF State, but I did pitch in high school. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, no, I got media. I mean, I knew that I was not, I was a pitcher that I topped out at like 72 miles an hour in high school, and that was it. And I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work. And I kind of always knew that I wanted to write. And then I just kept writing for school newspapers. And then I started this podcast in 2020, right in the middle of COVID, Rizzo cast, where I just talked to baseball people, former players, current players, managers, coaches, media. And then, SF Bay, who's cool enough to, lend opportunities to young writers and is kind of closely affiliated with San Francisco State. They give me the opportunity to, become their Giants beat writer for SF Bay. And I'm at the ballpark a few times a week covering the team. So that's been awesome. But I've met a lot of cool people doing this, and not a finished product yet, but definitely trending in the right direction. And I like the behind the scenes stuff. I like telling stories of players. I like, how players kind of, fell in love with the game, because, we all have that story of how we fell in love with the game, and every story is different. And, I love hearing about the motivation behind them playing baseball, the way things work in a baseball clubhouse, the way things are thought out on the field. So all the thinking in baseball, it might not appeal to other people, which is why they're watching football and maybe basketball more nowadays. But no, I agree with it. We got to get more people in the game of baseball, especially young people, because we are losing out, especially on the athletic side. We're losing out to unbelievably great young athletes that are just having their interest, fueled by the other sports. So no, it's been a fun ride, but not done yet. Still a lot more to come.
A lot to go. I'm glad you're all about baseball, because we do need the younger generation. I read a study that's the conversation for another time, but the last study I read of the average fan base for Major League Baseball now is like a 52-year-old white man, and that's not
sounds about right.
You don't want that. I mean, that's about my age, but my demographic. I'm 54 now, but my demographic's kind of past the time for the new money coming in. And so that's kind of the way it's going right now. And hopefully they can turn it around, because they need to incentivize the young people to come back to it. All right, Steven Rissotto with the Rizzo podcast and Shutdown inning. Let's get back to a little bit more baseball here. Let's go to the Giants real quick here. They've got Bay Area guy Mitch Haniger. His coach was my coach, 30 years apart, but his coach was my coach. I like him. Power hitting, right fielder, DH, probably a DH for them. Josh Bell signed with the Guardians, but this is from another post. But Sean Manaea just got signed by the Giants after leaving San Diego. They've made some other transactions. Their minor league system, one of the best thought of. Give me your take on the Giants as we go forward into the winter here.
So are you a mini Monarch? Or are you a former mini Monarch?
I'm not a mini Monarch, but his one of his winter coaches was my coach. I'm a Pioneer High School Mustang down here in San Jose.
Okay, so that means that you have a little bit of a Mitch Haniger esque skills in you, Vasu. But no, yeah, this is a deal that, I mean, it's funny because a lot of
the ask when you say that, because it's very little.
Yeah, I guess so. No, this is an interesting deal for the Giants. I mean, they're getting a guy who definitely hits when he's healthy. And I think that's the key word, when he's healthy. He hasn't been healthy. He's battled through a few things, missed the 2020 season, a couple of freak injuries, testicular, I believe, is like a rupture there, which sounds awful. But no, he hits right-handed pitching. He hits left-handed pitching. He's going to be an everyday guy in the lineup at a corner outfield spot, whether they want to put him in left field. I know he's only played right field in the big leagues, but right field is a little bit tougher to navigate. So maybe he's going to be in left. I don't know. He actually has a press conference right after this at 2:00. So I'm going to head over there next. Maybe I'll fill you in on what goes on there, but 3-year deal, opt out after 2 years. and he's not supposed to be the only outfielder that they get. I know it happened right in the middle of the Judge thing, but when they got Haniger, the plan was to have him and Judge. So I wouldn't doubt them trying to go out and find a different outfielder. Obviously the good ones are kind of off the board now, which is kind of an issue. But Mitch Haniger is going to be an everyday guy. I know everybody's talking about the platoons. This is a good opportunity for the Giants to say, we're getting an outfielder who won't be platooned, and I think the fan base is going to be pretty happy about that. But high upside guy. It's definitely a Farhan Zaidi type signing.
Yeah.
But good to see some traction there in San Francisco, because these fans are dying for some game-changing bat for sure.
All right, a couple more minutes here with Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo podcast and Shutdown Inning. What with Mitch Haniger there in the order, Jock Peterson re-signed, another Bay Area guy. He's the left-handed version. Whoops, you there?
Yes.
Gotcha. All right.
Yep.
Gotcha for a second. Lost you for a second. Can you hear me?
Yes. I could hear you. Can you hear me,
Steven?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I could hear you.
Okay. All right. A little delay there, but here we go. All right. So Jock Peterson is back. He's going to be in left field. He's not a right fielder. Mitch Haniger can play right there for the Giants. He can DH. I think he's mostly going to be a DH for them because of his injuries. You don't want to get him injured, kind of like the Tatis deal of not wanting to get injured in the field because your bat's more important. So what else are the Giants looking at going into 2023 from I know starting pitching? They need some bullpen help. What are you going to do with Brandon Belt at first base? That's another issue. What are they looking at? What have you heard in terms of offseason for the Giants?
I'd be surprised if Belt comes back. I think that they're going to go ahead and get stick with Wilmer Flores, J.D. Davis, David VR, Lamont Wade Jr. at first base. They're going to go with some type of tandem there. They're trying, I believe, for sure to get Correa. So they definitely want one of those shortstops. I don't know if they pivot to Swanson next. I don't know if that's something they do, and move Crawford to third base. From what I've heard, he's open to it. We'll see on that. Definitely they want to get another outfielder. They need bullpen help. That's been an issue. And probably one more starter. I know they just added Sean Manaea to their rotation. But maybe a Chris Bassett is a good fit there. I know they were in on Senga, but maybe Carlos Rodon, a reunion there. I don't know what the odds are there, but they definitely want to be more athletic, more younger, and we'll see if their acquisitions match up to their eventual desire. But they missed out a lot on free agency. We might have to see a trade coming in. Who knows?
Well, we got the whole winter and all the offseason right up until spring training to get to that. So it's been great. You're doing a great job on the RizzoCast. It's a good listen. I encourage everybody to get on the RizzoCast at Steven Rissotto on Twitter, at RizzoCast, and at Shutdown_inning for Shutdown Inning. Tell me about the two different, what's the difference between the two podcasts before I let you go?
Yeah, so RizzoCast is just with me, and it's kind of an interview type show where I have people from around the baseball world on. We talk about the game. We talk about their careers, whether it be media, whether it be former players, like I mentioned, coaches, people that have been in the game or associated with the game. Sometimes fans. I bring on a lot of fans. I try to make it as inclusive as possible. I actually have a recording later today with former Oakland A's right-hander and former KBO pitcher Dan Straley. So Dan Straley is going to come on RizzoCast pretty soon. And then the Shutdown Inning is a podcast that I have with my friend Tyler Hall, and we discuss kind of everything that's happening in the baseball world. And it's usually just banter talk. It gives me somebody to talk to about this stuff, and it's not just me talking into the screen. So me and Tyler talk it up, and sometimes we're joined by guests. So I figured it's two a little bit different podcasts. So one of these days, we got to start like a whole podcast network of all the podcasts that are Bay Area based. That would be a pretty cool thing.
I think that'd be great. I think we can do it, and you can lead the way here. You're the next generation of broadcasters coming in, so hopefully it all works out for you. You do a great job on the two podcasts. I like listening. I like seeing your stuff, and I like your takes going into it. So I appreciate the time. We'll do it again real soon. Good luck to everything that you're doing, and stay in touch. Are you born and raised in the Bay Area?
Born and raised in the Bay Area.
Are you on the 49er bandwagon?
Yes, sort of. 49er bandwagon, Warriors bandwagon, but I was born in San Francisco and raised and still live in Pacifica. So,
well, apparently Brock Purdy can run for mayor now after the last 2 weeks. So it'd be pretty good. Do you cover other sports, or are you just doing baseball right now?
the plan is in the future definitely to cover other sports, but right now it's definitely baseball.
All right. Well, you're doing a great job with that. Appreciate the time. We'll talk soon. Anytime you want to come back on, we'll talk baseball. I love talking baseball, and clearly you have a love for it and you have a passion for it too. So we'll do it again sometime over the winter and see how this whole winter and this whole free agency and this whole hot stove works out for you. Okay, Steven?
Thanks for having me on, Vasu. It was great finally talking to you. I know we've communicated on here for a while, but great to be on, and keep up the good work. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Steven Rissotto of the Rissotto podcast, of the Rizzo podcast, and the Shutdown inning. All right, we come back in 30 seconds. I'll close out, and we will have our best bet segment for the VParty Sports Podcast. Don't forget, we'll be back Thursday at 3 Eastern, and we will have all the best bet segment, all the NBA and NHL and NCAA stuff going on. If you're interested in inquiring about sponsorships, please feel free to do so. All right, I'll be back in 30 seconds, and we will talk to you with the best bet segment. All right, welcome back to the VParty Sports Podcast. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. You can reach me at VPartySports on Twitter, YouTube, Vasu Vaddiparty on Facebook, and YouTube as well too. Please subscribe to all of our podcast pages. There you go. You can do that. We'll be back on Thursday, 3 Eastern, with a full NFL, NBA, NCAA hoops preview, daily posts online, 6 Eastern weekdays. We'll loop this show back if you missed Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo podcast, Shutdown inning podcast. Great reaches for hot stove baseball. Free agency all taking place, and he had some really good, interesting takes on not only the Giants, but also Major League Baseball in general. All right, the worldwide famous, unprecedented, never duplicated best bet segment for today. We have Monday Night Football, we have the NBA, we have NCAA basketball, maybe a little hockey too as well. We didn't get a chance to talk about hockey a little bit, but it was a great conversation with Steven Rissotto of the Rizzo cast. All right, for the NFL tonight, actually, let's start with the NCAA. NCAA, 2 games tonight that I like, 3 games tonight. Arizona State in Las Vegas. They're going to take on Creighton. Creighton with a tough win over BYU. Arizona State's really good behind Bobby Hurley. They're +3. Shocking with the way Creighton played on Saturday. Take them at +3. University of San Francisco in Vegas as well. They're playing the undefeated New Mexico Lobos. New Mexico, 4-point favorite. USF has played better competition. Take the Dons +4. And then my guy, Steve Lavin, coach in the University of San Diego. They're going to play UC San Diego tonight. They're -6.5. Take USD. All right. In the NHL, real quick, Nashville -115. The Rangers and Devils. The Devils lost to the Islanders over the weekend. Rangers at -110. They're the home team. Take them. And then the Grand Salami, the total number of goals in every game, over 38.5 is the way to go in the hockey. And then in the NBA, 2 overs, Miami, Indiana over 228, Brooklyn, Washington over 227, San Antonio +8.5 at home against Cleveland, and Oklahoma City +8.5 against Dallas. And then the Celtics get up off the deck with the Los Angeles Clippers -3.5 for Boston. Take them. And then finally, Monday Night Football. If you can get them at 3, they're 2.5 right now, but I would buy the half point and get them to 3 because it's going to be a close game with Kyler Murray. They're very good at home in terms of covering the spread. The Arizona Cardinals +3 against the Patriots tonight on Monday Night Football. All right. Once again, we'll be back on Thursday, 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific with a full show. Daily post every day at 6 Eastern. Sponsorship inquiries, please contact me directly. We'll be back Thursday, as I said. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. This is the VParty Sports Podcast for Monday. Enjoy it. We will have the replays coming up, and we will see you sometime soon. And don't forget to check out social media for daily posts every day at 6 Eastern. Take care, everybody.